The knock came at 6:12 a.m., sharp and deliberate, the kind that doesn't ask permission to enter your life. It announces that something you buried last night has come back for you. Daniel froze in the narrow hallway of his small apartment, one sock on, the other forgotten in his hand, his daughter Lily still asleep behind a door decorated with paper stars. He wasn't expecting anyone. No friends dropped by this early. No deliveries came before sunrise. And certainly not her. When he opened the door, the woman standing there didn't smile, didn't frown, she simply looked at him with eyes that carried authority, exhaustion, and something dangerously close to vulnerability. "You forgot something last night," said Evelyn Hart, CEO of Hartwell Industries, his boss, the most powerful woman in the building where he cleaned offices after hours, and the woman he had helped when she collapsed in the rain outside a diner 12 hours ago. Daniel's first instinct was to apologize, even though he didn't know for what. The second was to hide the panic that surged through him like cold water. Evelyn Hart did not knock on the doors of single dads in low-income apartments. She lived in penthouses, spoke in boardrooms, and made decisions that affected thousands of lives with a flick of her pen. Yet here she was, raincoat draped over one arm, hair pulled back too tightly, eyes softer than he had ever seen them at work. Last night replayed in fragments, how he had found her sitting on the curb, heels in her hand, mascara smudged, breathing like the world had finally caught up to her. He hadn't known who she was then. She was just a woman shaking in the cold. He had offered coffee, his jacket, a quiet place to sit. He had listened without interrupting as she talked about pressure, betrayal, loneliness. And when she finally stood to leave, she had pressed something into his palm in a rush of embarrassment and gratitude. In the confusion of getting Lily to school and rushing to his cleaning shift, he had forgotten to check his pocket. Evelyn stepped inside before he could invite her, her gaze taking in the worn couch, the second-hand bookshelf, the framed crayon drawing on the wall that read, "Best Dad Ever." Her voice softened. "I didn't come to intimidate you," she said. "I came because you deserve the truth." From her coat pocket, she pulled out a folded envelope. Inside was a handwritten note, his handwriting, words he barely remembered writing while she cried into her coffee cup. "You matter more than the company. Someone needs you alive. Don't disappear." She held the note like it was fragile glass. "You left this on the table," she said. "I needed to give it back. Anne. I needed to say thank you." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He hadn't meant for the words to mean anything beyond that moment. But seeing them now, in her hands, made him realize how rarely anyone spoke to her like a human being. The days that followed were uneasy. At work, Evelyn was the same composed CEO, but now she knew his name, his story, his daughter's favorite color. Daniel worried constantly, about boundaries, about rumors, about losing the job that barely kept them afloat. Then came the challenge neither of them expected. Hartwell Industries announced restructuring. Overnight, contracts were cut. Daniel's cleaning company was on the list. Panic set in as co-workers whispered about layoffs. That evening, Daniel found an email in his inbox, not a termination notice, but a request. Evelyn wanted to see him. Not as an employee. As someone who had reminded her what it felt like to be seen. In her office, she confessed the truth she never told the board, that the company's aggressive growth had cost her everything else, including her health. She offered Daniel a role in a new internal program focused on employee wellness and fair wages, not as charity, but because she needed someone honest enough to tell her when she was wrong. He hesitated. "I can't afford to fail," he said quietly. Evelyn nodded. "Neither can I." What they built together wasn't perfect. There were setbacks, angry shareholders, late nights where doubt pressed in on them both. But there were also victories, contracts saved, jobs protected, Lily laughing in Evelyn's office as she drew new stars for the walls. Daniel learned that strength wasn't about power, but about showing up even when you're afraid. Evelyn learned that leadership without compassion was just another kind of emptiness. And the forgotten thing from last night, the note, the moment, the knock at the door, became the beginning of something neither of them planned but both of them needed. The second knock came months later, softer this time, almost shy, and Daniel knew before he opened the door that his life had already changed beyond repair. Evelyn stood there again, no rain, no urgency, just a small smile and 2 coffee cups in her hands, as if daring the world to interrupt her. "You didn't forget anything this time," she said. But I was hoping you might find something with me. Daniel looked back at Lily, now older, braver, watching from the hallway with curious eyes, and then back at the woman who had once been untouchable and was now simply human. He stepped aside and let her in, understanding at last that sometimes the smallest kindness, offered on an ordinary night, can echo loud enough to change everything.